There is no scientific evidence to indicate how far away from human habitation fracked wells should be placed. It's a moving target. The state went from 350 to 500 and now to 1,000 for schools. But there's no scientific basis for that, for those movements. It's just a way to keep ahead of the public and its disgruntlement over how the oil industry seems to own the state. But the water belongs to the people of the state constitutionally. It doesn't belong to the state. It doesn't belong to Farmer Jones. It belongs to the public. They have use rights, which are strong, but the water of the state is a public resource. You're creating 30 billion gallons annually of wastewater, and all of that has to be injected into these deep wells. These deep wells leak. They absolutely do, and they will over time. And the information is starting to be surfaced that they really do leak. Even Schlumberger says that some of them will leak initially, and 60% will leak after 30 years, and all will leak eventually.
We know, whether you accept these studies or not, that the industry releases toxic gas, and it imposes it on you as neighbors. Does that sound American?
Because as a matter of fact, as a matter of empirical evidence, as a matter of science, the debate about the safety of hydraulic fracturing is over. Is fracking safe? The answer is, beyond a reasonable doubt, emphatically yes. 60 years of experience under the microscope of government regulators, and reams and reams and reams of science, academic inquiry, regulatory analysis, sworn statements from the nation's leading state and federal health officials over the last 60 years since fracking was first implemented. They all demonstrate a pretty simple truth, and that is that hydraulic fracturing is, has been, and will continue to be safe. In a day and time when the two major political parties agree on virtually nothing, in an hour and place when the leading voices in our politics seem utterly intent to be divided on everything, on this issue there's broad unanimity. Hydraulic fracturing is safe. Friends, the scientific debate is over. A recent study by the University of Colorado showed that a fracking ban would reduce the state's job base by 93,000 jobs into the coming decades. And it's interesting that the shift in tone that we're hearing from those who are championing the cause of these fracking bans. It's not about a ban per se. We just want a different approach. And yet Wes and Phil have traveled the country touting the fracking ban, just as the chief supporters of Mr. Polis's initiative have done the same. This is about a ban on hydraulic fracturing.
According to the U.S. Department of Energy, this technology isn't new. It's been used for more than 60 years and in more than 1 million oil and gas wells. The process lasts just a few days, just long enough to open those tiny cracks in deep rock formations so oil and gas can flow into the well. Finally, what does President Obama's EPA say about today about the activist claim that there's something inherently dangerous about hydraulic fracturing and therefore it must be banned? Gina McCarthy, very clearly, the EPA administrator, says there's nothing inherently dangerous about this technology.
Well, just a minute. What Lisa Jackson specifically said, and Henry says the fracking practice itself did not cause the problem. What we see is the air emissions are the problem, not fracking per se. And even if it's done perfectly and they stop their toxic air emissions, they'd still be producing another fossil fuel. That's exacerbating climate change. Indeed, because of the leaks from the industry, producing shale gas is exacerbating climate change at a faster rate than had we stayed on coal. Your legislature has already voted to require the utilities to produce 30% of their energy by renewable sources by 2020. We're on that path. That's the good news in this. That's the silver lining in this cloud.
You can take a scaloscope and look at the past, but we are hard at the business of destroying our future if we continue to inject water into the ground as we are. This ideology has no part in this. It shouldn't have. It should be, are we destroying our children's future and our grandchildren's future? And do we have to? If there were no options, I guess we'd just do it and leave them a small card. But we do have options. and we should look at those options seriously, very, very seriously. As to the economics, the idea is that if we don't drill the hell out of this place, we're going to fall off the end of the earth because there are no other options. That's just not true. There are huge subsidies to the oil and gas industry that the renewables can't even compare with.
A sustainable future with 100% renewables is not one that can be exported. It's clean, it'll have less asthma, it'll have less social cost. We don't have to force upon our future generations a bust cycle from oil and gas. We can get there quicker, the technology is available, and we're going to do it in a clean and healthy way.
The reality is the American public hears that, science that is, we won't go into it, it's not real. And there's a reason it's not economic. If it were, it would be economic and it would be working and it would be on the marketplace. The progression of the fracking debate from community to community is interesting because it's the same cast of characters rolling out the same pseudo-scientific reports that have been debunked by state and federal health officials, not industry. The Colorado CDPHE, we talk in acronyms, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. These are people, they're nonpartisan, non-political positions. They make public health their career. Many serve through both administrations. Denuded this study on birth defects. The same is true with earthquakes, cancer allegations, flaming faucets.
You know, you can put a frog in a bucket of water and slowly heat it until that bucket boils and the frog dies, and nothing ever happens. We don't want that to happen to our grandchildren. We don't want to be the frog because we believe in incrementalism so much that we can't feel what's happening to us.
But on the other side is arguments of fear, right? You hear cancer, earthquakes, birth defects, flaming faucets, and now a comparison of 110,000 people who are working every day, working pretty hard, making a good living for their families as being akin to slavery. And to me, they're arguments that on the science, they don't hold up. The Cornell study, the Garfield birth defect study, they've all been blasted and blown out of the water. They raise fear. That's why they win these fracking bans in places like Boulder and Fort Collins. It was awfully close in Broomfield after a huge investment by people on their side creating fear. But in time, this argument will be won because their arguments are fear.
Look at what the regulators have concluded. Consistently, they come back saying that the oil and gas production, and specifically hydraulic fracturing, which is the subject of our debate this evening, is fundamentally safe. Banning an industry based on your political views, which you are completely entitled to under the First Amendment, but banning an industry based on your negative political view of it, that's an agenda that's simply too extreme for Colorado, I would submit.
Simon,
Thank you.
I know you and your wife